Hello, everyone. Welcome to Nels and Beauty Talk, NFTs, crypto, and Web3. I am your host, Asia the Bird. So I have a very special guest with me today. She is the managing editor of SuperRare magazine. Please welcome Vinny. Hello, Vinny, and welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks. So great to be here.
Yeah, I'm glad to have you. So I want to go ahead and get started. Like, where are you originally from? And tell us about your upbringing.
I was born in New York City and I grew up frequenting the literary and theater art worlds of the East Village. Most of my life was very like avant-garde art scene and poetry readings and all kinds of weird stuff. But that's art. I grew up always wanting to be a writer. Like I learned the alphabet and started writing little books at age 6. So it was just always something I wanted to do. And I also did a lot of performing arts. I got to perform in some plays in New York, in high school and stuff. So yeah, just a very like cultural experience. And both my parents are writers as well. So I grew up in a very kind of creative household.
Yeah, that's really, really amazing. But I also want to get into in regards to journalism, are you self-taught or did you go to school for journalism as well?
Yeah, I love this question. So I studied the performing arts and creative writing and women's studies in college. So I never studied journalism. I was always much more interested in writing poetry and nonfiction, like creative nonfiction, which sometimes involves research, but I also did just like a lot of comedic writing. I didn't really get into journalism until after I graduated from my MFA. And two things brought me to it. One was I was a college professor and I was teaching English comp. And then randomly they had an opening for teaching intro to journalism. And I was like, I could do that. So I just crammed in like a couple of weeks everything I needed to know for basic journalism and kind of learned along the way. And then the second thing that brought me to journalism was my need for money. Like it's really hard to publish creative writing. At best, you'll get like $100 for 5 poems, which is like you can spend years on 5 poems, and $100 barely buys you dinner in New York. So I took a class with Sue Shapiro at the New School, who's just a really talented writer and journalist. And she helped me learn how to cold pitch to editors. And after working with her, I was published in The Independent and Wired. And, I started getting these clips into these like huge magazines. And it was great because I did first person narrative essays. So it's still incorporated the personal and the creative, but the difference was I was using the personal in order to talk about some sort of important news item.
Yeah, most definitely. But I also want to get into like in regards to like poetry as well. Like, you have like poets like Langston Hughes, Edgar Allan Poe, the famous poets. So what would you consider to be like, who would you consider to be your favorite poets?
Well, those two are up there for sure. I put both Langston Hughes and Edgar Allan Poe on the top 5. But yeah, I really, my favorite writer right now is actually Virginia Woolf, who's a novelist and nonfiction writer. But what I love about her writing is that it reads like poetry and it's very stream of consciousness. And so, yeah, a lot of my writing kind of follows 1920s modernist writing. I would say some of my favorite poems are The Love Song of J. Alfred Prufrock by T.S. Eliot. I really love The Raven by Edgar Allan Poe. And yeah, I'm just always looking for new poems to read because that's kind of what keeps me going and keeping me inspired to try new things.
Yeah. That's really, really cool. Now, in regards to poetry as well, like, what did it do for you? Was it like a means of escape? Was it a means of expression? Like what did it do for you in regards to like, poetry as well?
Yeah. So poetry was always really special to me because first of all, I just find it really fun. I think the fact that the whole point of poetry is to play with words and to be really thoughtful about the words that you use was just a really important lesson for me because, anytime you're talking to people, whether you're teaching or having a debate or, conversation, the words that you choose are really important and they can totally derail or they determine where the next part of the idea comes. And so I just thought it was really fun. And I also just really loved performing poetry. I think poetry is the most performative of any of the creative genres, partially because poetry comes from an oral tradition. It was originally something that people memorized and then shared with other people. And it comes from that musical tradition. But also I grew up going to the New Eurekan Poets Cafe, and they have like the famous poetry slam. And so that kind of spoken word performance was also something that I was really into when I was like in college and early grad school. So yeah, it's always been just something that I really am drawn to. And I think it also like really connects us, like when I'm feeling really sad or really happy, it's often a poem that comes to mind, like more than anything. So it's really been the thing that I've seen the world through.
Yeah, right, exactly. And I interviewed someone who's a poet, but also a very talented artist. His name is I Paint Creatures, and he's like the lead for the group called the Funky Eye Puppets. And he's into NFTs and Web3, and he's a very talented poet. And like the way that poetry is spoken, it has a sense of connection. It's an art form just like anything else. And one of the other poets poems that I've really connected with the most and really touched me was during my time in high school hearing Shane Kosan's To This Day. And it was about bullying. It was a very, very deep, poetry, a poetry piece that really touched me and connect with a lot of young kids who have been bullied or, have dealt with, being picked on, not only in school, but in life, so poetry can have a very meaningful connection.
No, that really speaks to me. People are always surprised to learn that like I was bullied from like elementary school through high school. Like it was a huge part of my childhood, just like feeling really kind of like an outcast, and I think it's really difficult. Like I definitely was dealing with like being a tomboy and like, dressing really masculine, but I'm half Mexican and I'm half white. And so it's always this like weird thing of like you're light skinned, so you're like privileged, but then you're also, like I'm the daughter of an immigrant. Like there are so many things that people don't realize about my experience. Like my dad didn't finish college and like I didn't have help applying to college. And I realized in the last year that when I was there were so many questions that I had. Like, I got to college and I didn't even realize like, oh snap, I need money for books.
Right.
Like, it's just the little things that at the time I was like, oh, everybody's going through this. And that wasn't true. But I don't know. I feel like, again, coming back to this like written and spoken word that's like also talking about other people's struggles, like it does make you feel at least like, all right, this isn't just happening to me. I'm not being specifically targeted. Like, well, yes, a little bit. It can feel that way. But you know what I mean? Like a lot of us go through that. Especially now with like social media and all of our, kind of internet personas. So yeah, it's nice to know that you're not alone. And at the very least, there's like someone there to help you through it.
Yeah, right, exactly. And that's why like now that mental health is very, very like more expressed, especially on Twitter Spaces. There's a great deal of Twitter Spaces and people, especially in the Web3 space, talking about mental health and how important that is, so, but yeah, I was picked on myself, about how, and because I was different. And the thing is that, like I'm one of the first people in my family to, get into college, so I want to definitely ask this, like, have you ever felt like, there was like such high standards, like from like your parents or your family?
I would say yes and no. I mean, I grew up like kind of poor and like there weren't really that many like there were opportunities that I found for myself, but for me, I think the pressure came from within. My dad left Mexico to give himself and his future children a better life. Like when you're in Mexico, he grew up in 1950s Mexico. My dad's a bit older than most of my peers' dads, and he grew up in a time where there was no social mobility. Like you basically are born into a certain social class and that's where you're going to stay. And so he also felt like artistically restrained in Mexico. And so that's, you know, a couple of reasons why he moved to America, and he like really struggled, and he was an illegal, you know, immigrant for many years. And I always felt like, well, he made this huge sacrifice, you know, for my future. And so I always wanted to make sure that I like didn't take that for granted. I've always just held myself to a really high standard, which I think is part of why I've, you know, had the pleasure and the experience that I've had of like being pretty successful. But I think it also can sometimes lead to the kind of pressure that, you know, can make you deal with anxiety and depression and feeling like you're not good enough because, you know, the person that you want to be like is impossible to become. Like, no, right. And so how do you kind of balance, you know, wanting to show gratitude for all of the people in your life that brought you to where you are, but also being proud of yourself and what you've done, like in a lot of ways without other people's help.
Yeah, right. Most definitely. Yeah, like there's such an essence of just high standards, you know, like for the next generation, you know, and like my dad is from Philadelphia. He used to be in the Navy, and you know, my mom used to work for, you know, the federal government. So, you know, and the thing is also too, like, you know, with their upbringing, and that really inspires me to, you know, really, you know, do well. And that's something that, you know, really, like when you look at your parents, you like, I definitely make my parents proud, you know?
Yes. And then also, you know, my dad, he is very, he's very hard to please. And I'm not exactly sure why, but it took me a couple of years to also realize that, like, yes, you want to make your parents proud, but more importantly, you need to make yourself proud. You need to love what you've done because you did it, not because you did it for somebody else. And I think I see a lot of that spirit here in Web3 because, you know, we're not really trying to impress the old guard. We're not trying to, you know, impress all of these kind of gatekeepers that have decided who wins and who loses, right? Like we're in a really special time where we're able to redefine our standards of success and redefine ourselves. And I love the fact that like I always grew up thinking that like the way that you look and the way that you carry yourself and, you know, like your resume has to be shiny and perfect. Like everything has to be perfect for you to get noticed. And like we're living in a world where like anonymity is, you know, so a big player of like what's going on. So none of that even matters in some cases. And I love that. I mean, it's like being freed to all these things we felt like we had to uphold for our entire lives.
Yeah, right, exactly. But I definitely want to switch gears and talk about you being the editor-in-chief of Lit Magazine. So what was that experience like, you know, just writing for, you know, that magazine?
So I really loved that experience because it was quite different than my current role. I was essentially spending most of my time reaching out to writers and going through submissions to find poetry, nonfiction, fiction, and art to put together into a magazine. And so I had the, you know, great honor of being David Lehman's research assistant, and David Lehman is perhaps one of the, you know, most influential living poets today. He edited the Oxford Book of American Poetry. So pretty big deal. Yeah. And so through him, I was able to meet all these incredible writers. Like Terrence Hayes, for example, is like, to me, one of the most promising young writers. I believe he's from Pittsburgh, and he did this amazing book about what's it called? It's like Sonnets from My Past and Future Assassin. And he's talking about like his experience as a Black man, like all the different ways that American society tries to kill you, you know? And just like, and what a, you know, and I met like Joyce Carol Oates, who's like this fantastic fiction writer who teaches at Princeton. And so I was able to really tap this network and to create like a really interesting magazine, and to also reintroduce translation, because having a global literary community was very important to me. And then I was doing this for several years. We had a print magazine coming out in 2020, and then the pandemic completely derailed that project. But I'm happy to share that the book is coming out this fall. Lit 33, and it has like just this amazing array of, you know, diverse authors, diverse genres, people doing really weird stuff, both in art and literature. And like I've just always been really interested in not only, you know, what people are doing presently, but like what can be done. What are the weird things people are thinking about and trying? And, you know, maybe it fails, but I think that art is a really special kind of, you know, human mechanism where
Right.
is there really like failed art? Like, I don't know, like who decides, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right, exactly. Most definitely. But also tell us about your novel and what can people expect from your novel?
Yeah, so I find this funny because I have master's degrees in poetry and nonfiction, and then right
Mhm.
after graduating, I got inspired to write a novel. I was like, I did not study fiction, but I like to think I have the skills. Um, so I mentioned earlier that like I, you know, I don't come from money, and so I had to like take
Mhm.
out a ton of student loans to go to school. um, I went to school for 7 years, and you know that's very expensive, especially if you're paying out of pocket. And so after I graduated and I started paying back these loans, I had this like kind of major
Mhm.
just panic, this like all
Right.
encompassing panic that like wouldn't go away. And I kind of worked through it by beginning this novel that is,
Mhm.
you know, talking about what is this experience of like growing up thinking that if you do all the right things, if you go to college, you get straight A's, you get that internship,
Mhm.
you know, bust your butt, you get another degree. Like if you
Right.
follow the steps that you're going to be rewarded at the end. And then dealing with the fact that like people of our generation have already gone through multiple recessions, right? Like we're
Mhm.
still dealing with the great financial crisis of 2008, and that happened right before I went to college. And
Mm.
you know, these are things that you don't really understand when you're a teenager, and even in your early 20s you don't. I never thought about, all right, well, what is the economy like now? What might it be like in 4 years when I graduate? Like that having some sort of impact on what you study if you go to an expensive school or community college. Also
Right.
thinking about how people really diminish the value of community college so that it's not even an option. Like, so this novel is really working through all of the deception that I believe like millennials have just kind of had to wade through, and dealing with
Mhm.
a kind of, you know, you feel proud of what you've done and educating yourself. That's like enlightenment ideals, but then feeling like you've been trapped and
Right.
wondering if you're ever going to get out of it. And so the character is going through all of this and like coming up with ideas of how to get rid of her student debt. Like maybe she's going to move to another country and change her name. Maybe she's
Right.
going to take her own death. Like maybe she's going to actually, you know, she gets pretty dark and thinks about, is it worth living a life where you're constantly enslaved to your debt? So
Right.
so it's a pretty heavy book, but I think, you know, I did research into this and there are no books that talk about this. And this is something that literally affects 40 million people, like in
Mhm.
the United States. This is a really important topic. And I'm hoping that the book brings attention to the fact that we don't consider mental health in regard to the conversation about student loan debt. People look at it as just a number and then they blame you for taking out the debt, and they don't realize that, you know, 1 in 15 people kill themselves. Like
Mm.
and even more think about killing themselves because of student loan debt and the way that it affects, you know, Black and Hispanic people like more than white people. You know, the way that it can really mess you up. It's supposed to uplift you and it ends up messing you up in a lot of cases.
Mhm. Yeah, like, and I like the point that you made about mental health because people don't really consider that, like how you said, people just look at it as just like a number, but definitely like, definitely that is a struggle, and I've heard cases where people, have to pay debt for the next 10, 20 years, you
Or
know,
forever. I mean, there are people
or
who
forever. Yeah.
die, you know, like so it's a little
Hmm.
crazy. And I the other thing is like this country just really, I feel like debt is just a huge part of like how America works and how people achieve the American dream, whether it's student
Hmm.
loan debt or a mortgage or a car loan. I mean, bankruptcy is a thing that happens here all the time. Like it's just,
Hmm.
I don't know, there's something about the way that debt functions in the United States that I find kind of troubling. And, hopefully this book can like open up a conversation about how we can fix this.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, most definitely. And of course it is rare for, in regards to like people getting full rides. Like you hear about your friends and, get full rides to full scholarship to college and stuff like that. And the thing is, like for me, I'm grateful, to not deal with any debt, but I have friends that have to pay that stuff back from college. Some of my colleagues I went to college with.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's
everybody
tough.
knows somebody.
Yeah.
Who's dealing with this. It's that prevalent. And yeah, I just think that like if our society expects you to have, at the very least a college degree to enter the workforce, then that means we need to find a better way to pay for it. Because I had plenty of student aid, like both from my low income household and from like merit based, and I still ended up with a ton of debt. And it's the type of thing that like, like in my case and in a lot of my friends' cases who went to grad school, we're very grateful that the Biden administration is forgiving part of our debt. But for me, it literally only covers the interest that's been accrued. So like, thank you, I'll take it. But it's not addressing the larger problem, which is the predatory nature of how these loans are structured and the predatory nature of how college is advertised to us from the time we're little kids to the time that we sign the papers, that we sign that deal with the devil, saying we'll take the money and deal with the consequences, whatever they may be.
Yeah, right, exactly. And I think, going to show with any career that you want to pursue, you don't have to go to college. Like how you said, like, and I understand what you were fully saying, because it is pushed for us to go to college after high school, and I can understand why people also too, drop out after 1 or 2 years and all of a sudden they got a big career. Like I know one of my SCAD colleagues, she dropped out, I think, after 1 or 2 years. And now she got her own game called Dream Daddy. You know what I mean? So it's like,
no, that's the thing. Like college isn't even for everyone. Like after my first semester, I was like, this is not really my jam. Like I feel like I could be doing something better with my time. But because you already, take out that initial, lump sum, you're kind of like guilt yourself into doing it. Cause you're like, well, what now? Like, you can't really cut your losses here. And I think that's something a lot of people are also dealing with. But I really hope that we can also start having this conversation as a society where, you don't have to go to college. Also, you don't have to go right away. Like you can take some time to yourself, try something out, like the game of life, right? You can go left and then you can try something and then you can always get that degree later. Like there shouldn't be any shame about being, an older student. I mean, when I was teaching at a state school for a while, and some of my students, it was actually really funny because I started teaching at the college level when I was 24. And there were times where I would have students who were like in their 30s and I'd be like, because in academia, there's this weird power dynamic that's often linked to age for some reason. And it was a little bit jarring at times to be like, all right, I'm in the higher power dynamic, but you're like 10 years older than me. But I'm here to help you. At the end of the day, I think that's what teaching really is, just sharing your expertise, whether it be on the subject matter or, how to succeed in college or how to succeed after college.
Yeah, absolutely. Most definitely. I can agree with that wholeheartedly. But I definitely want to talk about NFTs and Web3. So when did you first get exposed to NFTs and Web3?
So I love this story. I was a professor and the pandemic hit and I began to see I began to see that the prospects of my teaching career were beginning to dwindle. Before the pandemic, I already knew it was a hard life because I met many talented colleagues who had been adjuncting, which is part-time teaching, for like 15 or 20 years. And I was like, I am not doing this for 15 or 20 years, like teaching 5 classes across 3 colleges. I am not doing that. It's hard enough now. And they don't pay you well. So it's like you're working your butt off for like literally to make the poverty line. And so I made this decision in the summer of 2021. I was like, all right, I'm committing all of my time to becoming an editor somewhere, anywhere. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, I've always, every summer I've done this, but something was different last summer where,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I must have interviewed for 15 or 20 different companies, you know, like Popular Science and Business Insider and 17 Magazine. Like this was the
Right.
first time I had gotten all of these interviews.
Right.
And I applied to SuperRare on LinkedIn. I typed in editor and I applied to everything. And I was like, website looks cool, art great. And so I got invited to the first interview. And so I started looking it up and I was like, what the hell is this? This isn't, wait, this is art, but it's crypto. Wait, this is crypto. And so I just researching it and looking at the artworks and trying to kind of understand like what was the tie between the art that I did understand and the technology that I didn't. And, you know, this was a time where there were still only 25 people at SuperRare. So every time that I would get an interview, I would not hear back for like 10 days. And so each time I just assumed they ghosted me and I didn't get the job. And after about 6 weeks, I got invited to join the team. And I was just so excited to have this prospect. And, you know, that first week that I started, I had a writing assignment to talk about Vellum LA and their screens where you could showcase the NFTs, the digital art. And yeah, from there, I just got really into learning about artists. And I really learned all of my crypto knowledge from being on the job, from speaking to people, interviewing them, and just doing a lot of reading and research about this space. And I just, I can't believe that like I fell backwards into what is potentially one of the most groundbreaking industries happening today. And at a point in time where, I mean, it's like being in the internet like company, you know, bull run in the 90s. Like it's really exciting and not a lot of people know what we're doing here. But I'm just happy to be along for the ride. And like, you know, my journalism was mostly like social justice journalism. And I think it's really important to have people like me in this space so that we can continue to reconsider what we're doing. Right. Take a breath, because this space is just like 100 miles an hour, 24/7. You got to take a breath and be like, all right, let's make sure that we're causing more good than harm, right? Let's make sure that we're not creating another power structure that's going to disenfranchise marginalized people. Like having that kind of background, I think has been something that SuperRare has really liked about my work and the people that I decide to interview. I've helped with a lot of different exhibitions that we've done with different voices. And so I think it's just been a great thing for us as a company that's like a curated NFT platform. And hopefully other marketplaces will follow suit to make sure that we're celebrating people. And like not only in Black History Month and Pride Month and all this stuff, like, you know, championing diverse artists year round, because that's what I'm here to do.
Yeah, and that's what really cool what SuperRare is doing, you know. And of course, like with SuperRare, you know, it's invite only, but also I definitely want to get into in regards to you being the managing editor. So for people who don't know your role in SuperRare as a managing editor, like what is some things that you do in regards to being managing editor, and also with the exhibitions, what type of exhibitions do you guys hold?
Yeah, so great question. So SuperRare Magazine is the media arm of the company. And what we do is we basically educate readers on what are NFTs, what is the metaverse, why does all of this matter? And, you know, a lot of our articles do focus on artists or on the market or on, you know, art history as well, because there are a lot of tropes that are happening in the crypto art market that are actually similar to past markets. And so just kind of giving people a more familiar footing about the space and also getting them excited about it. You know, we've had just so many interesting stories about how crypto has changed people's lives. You know,
Mm-hmm.
There are artists who never thought they'd make a dime off of their art, which as a poet sounds familiar. And now they're supporting their families with money that they've made selling crypto art. And you talk about the effects of crypto in places like Latin America, where you can't trust the currency to maintain its value. So Bitcoin and Ethereum being volatile, they're like, yeah, well, at least it goes up in value. Like the swing goes both ways. Like in Latin America, it just goes down. So, having all of these perspectives and thinking about how crypto really can be a revolutionary force if we wield it in the right way. So that's really what the magazine is aimed at telling. That's the story we're telling. But we also help with visibility for all of the exhibitions that we do. Some of the exhibitions are just based on the curators, having a certain theme and then creating a group of artworks around it. But other exhibitions at SuperRare have included, specifically onboarding and celebrating trans artists, or queer artists, Black artists, Asian artists, also artists that come from like the global South versus, the global North. And so they might be geography based, or they'll be kind of around a certain identity experience. It really depends, because we bring on guest curators. And so like Cyber Yu, who's this really talented artist who lives in Berlin. I believe he's Vietnamese originally, did this really great Asia Awaken, exhibition. And that was like totally global. And that was super cool. And yeah, just we have worked with Linda Dunia, who is just like an amazing designer and NFT artist. And she brought on Black Rare, which was just celebrating like African-American experiences. And so we want to work with people who come from different backgrounds, because, what I've noticed being the editor and working on these exhibitions as an editor is just each one just tells this crazy story, and the art tells that story. And then, something that a lot of people don't know, I think we assume that like crypto is made up of a bunch of like white bros, but statistically speaking, Black people and Hispanic people actually own more crypto than any other group of people.
Wow.
Like 20 to 25% of all people who own crypto are like Black and or Hispanic. So 40% total between the two. And that's just kind of crazy, right? Because we're making these assumptions based on what education, or like, I don't know what the assumptions are based on. Maybe what we see when we go to conferences and what we see when we're, watching the news about people talking about crypto. But Web3, and by extension, what's being built in the metaverse, is actually more diverse than any other, industry in the past, because people of color are just a lot more willing to try something new, something that hasn't been, for lack of a better word, colonized by big business yet. Like the metaverse is still very much open to builders. And most of these builders are either devs or artists. So, so that's kind of allowing us to create a world that's like way more diverse and way more interesting. So that's a little off topic, but all in all, these are all the things that I work on. And I've also had the pleasure of working a bit with community. So the magazine puts on one Twitter space every single week, and we usually open with an open-ended question. We do a little bit of like background information, and then we open the conversation to the audience. And so it's really a community-driven event. But I've also helped with plenty of other Twitter spaces as well. I love answering questions in the community and connecting with people, and, being an asset for other people, because my teaching background allows me to be able to explain these very high level concepts in a pretty like layman's terms way. And I feel like the more people we educate, the more people we get excited about the space, the better the space is going to be. And the space isn't going to be successful until it is mainstream.
Yeah, most definitely. And it's really cool, that NFTs are really pushing the envelope, not just having, as like just artwork itself, but people getting more into utility. And I also like what you guys are doing, because like, I never heard of like, magazines like High Fructose or Juxtapost magazine, which are, the top, art magazines that I've heard and I've seen, being my time in SCAD, get into like crypto and NFTs. So that's really cool that you guys are really doing that. But also too, I definitely want to get into just in regards to the perks of joining SuperRare, and like what are some of the perks that you can, talk about in regards to getting involved with SuperRare?
So do you mean like for me or like for an artist who joined SuperRare?
For artists specifically.
Yeah. Okay, that's what I thought. So one kind of it's not a rumor. I think that SuperRare, like because it is curated and because there have been so many like monumental sales that have happened at SuperRare, we've kind of culminated this this false feeling of security that if people come on to SuperRare, it's like the golden ticket to the chocolate factory and they're going to like sell $1 million of artwork right away. And I just wanted to dispel that a little bit because it really undermines the fact that artists in crypto art are successful because they have worked their butts off like to get there, and they have worked really hard to create a community around themselves and around their artworks. And, that's kind of like one thing in NFT art that is a plus and a minus at the same time. You do benefit when you have your own persona and your own marketing, like you get to market yourself. But for those of us who don't have marketing experience, that can seem really kind of like scary to figure out, well, I don't know how to market myself. I don't know how to get followers. I don't know how to do this. And so it's a double-edged sword, right? And that's one of those things, like if we're going to be sovereign individuals, which is what crypto I think is really about at the end of the day, us making our own decisions, it also means that we have to be responsible for ourselves. And so the thing I do love about what SuperRare offers is it does give you that sense of community, I think, because like I never really used Twitter before I came to SuperRare. And then when I started working here, I was like, oh, I probably should get into this thing, crypto Twitter, whatever that is. And crypto Twitter has been probably the best like social media experience I've been a part of in my adult life. I mean, nothing will beat MySpace, all right, in like 2000. Rule number one, forever and always. But when it comes to the here and now, like crypto Twitter has been amazing. And like just following artists that you like, a lot of them follow you back, like just getting involved in conversations, going to Twitter spaces. Like these are all amazing ways that you can get involved. And, because SuperRare does so many Twitter spaces that are open to the public, it's a great way to get to know artists, both who are on the platform and who want to become part of the platform. But we're actually working towards creating more content for creators to know how to market themselves, because it is a difficult thing. And, I've been working at SuperRare for 1.5 years now, and I have 1.5 years of knowledge about getting into crypto Twitter and, meeting people at NFT exhibitions and like, how do you do that? And so I'd love to share that knowledge with people over an extended amount of time. But yeah, my favorite thing about SuperRare, and this is like not to knock any other marketplaces, is just that it's so much easier to find art that I like on SuperRare. And so like, I've noticed that, artists can really stand out on SuperRare versus on a platform like OpenSea or Foundation or Known Origin, where, you type in photography and you get like, 100,000 hits on there. And, I've noticed that a lot of artists will really go to town on the hashtags, like to make sure that their piece comes up in many different kinds of searches. Like, one of my favorite artworks comes up in the search surreal. And it's like, I love that. And it just shows like the personality that happens. And I've also noticed with SuperRare, and I can't say that it's not on other platforms, but there's like a really tight knit collector base on SuperRare as well. There are certain just, handles that you see everywhere. And so I do feel like on SuperRare, there is a group of collectors who's like constantly looking for new work. And so I'm not sure that they have that on other platforms. I do know that our collectors collect on other platforms as well, but I like thinking that, not that we're a gallery, but that we are helping collectors find art that they like, and we're helping artists to connect with those collectors, whether it's just about being there at all or helping them out with exhibitions, features, potentially getting an interview in the magazine. Like these are all different ways that we've helped artists to get visibility. And SuperRare is also really fantastic about, helping to retweet your work. If you're a SuperRare artist. So I know that can go a really long way for people, especially, if they haven't sold very many pieces on SuperRare yet.
Yeah, that's really, really cool. But I also want to get into just in regards to, what you guys holding like NFT exhibitions, but also to, holding, Twitter spaces. So just in regards to, holding Twitter space, or at least taking advantage of, the crypto Twitter spaces, like what are some tips you could provide as for someone who wants to hold their own NFT exhibition, or, especially with, taking advantage of the Twitter spaces?
Yeah, so I would say it's twofold. One thing that I think is being underutilized right now is all of the galleries that exist in the metaverse. Like this is a great way to showcase your artwork. And then you could have like a Twitter space that happens with the metaverse gallery. There's this amazing gallery. They actually opened their flagship gallery in crypto voxels and then created an IRL gallery in Chicago. So I started in the metaverse and then translated into, brick and mortar. It's usually and they're called I'm Not Art. And so that's, one great gallery for people to get involved in. Even though like NFTs are like, we're trying to be more decentralized, I think going to NFT native galleries is a great way to get involved, including like, the Museum of Crypto Art is a great place. But yeah, my favorite thing about spaces is just that, anybody can join and talk about the topic. We have spaces, I think, 5 days a week now, if not most days of the week. And so if there's a topic that interests you, maybe it's, our photography Twitter space, or maybe it's the Twitter space asking the question, is this a revolution or just another marketing slogan? Go to a space that you feel excited about and like share your thoughts. One thing that I would really urge people to not do, and this is like, classic crypto jargon, like do not shill your artwork. When you go to a Twitter space and we're talking about something, like we're interviewing an artist, and then you bring somebody on to chat and you think they're going to ask the artist a question, but instead they're like, hey, everybody check out my art. It's like so cringe, People are less likely to check out your art versus if you were to come up and show you were paying attention and ask a good question and be like, hey man, I'm an artist. I have this question for you. Like doing it in a charming way so that you like alert people to check you out, but without being super in everybody's face. I've seen a lot of people like on the Twitter spaces who, maybe months down the road, I notice, oh, you're on SuperRare now, or like, oh, you had a big sale on Foundation, right? Like, I think people are more willing to help you when they feel like you're genuinely interested in the community and not just trying to like push your product,
Right. Yeah, absolutely, most definitely. But also, too, I want to get into like the crypto market. So I definitely want to touch into that.
Yeah.
So you did mention, about how Ethereum is up here, in the States, but like in Latin America, is below. So how has the crypto market really affected different parts of the world in your perspective?
Yeah, so crypto has been actually a fantastic asset for people who live in countries with volatile fiat currencies. And so fiat referring just to, a paper currency that a country uses, like the euro or the pound. For example, in Argentina, there have been, in the last 25 years, there have been multiple times where the Argentine peso just like crashes. And there are all these rules about like, you can't take a certain amount of money out of the bank. Like it's just, there are a lot of weird regulations on the peso in Argentina. And so people buying Bitcoin has actually been a much better way for people to save for their retirement. Because, it's not affiliated with the government. There's no government. Bitcoin is global and decentralized. And so they can keep it there. And it's just safe. And, I mean, between now and when someone retires, who knows, Bitcoin might be 100K. Like, it might be the best 401k ever. Who knows? But at the very least, like, it's it's stabilized now around 20 grand. So it's a good investment for people in Argentina, for example. I've also talked to artists who live in Brazil who, like, Brazil has, like northern Mexico where my family lives, has, problems with violence and crime. And so having your money in Bitcoin or Ethereum or whatever crypto coin means you're less likely to get robbed for it, because not everybody there understands, like, oh, who's going to come and be like, give me your seed phrase? Like, so like it's easier to protect than, like, jewelry or cash or, even money in your bank account. But yeah, I think it's become an alternative to fiat. And when you think about I think we're at what, 10% inflation at this point. Like, the US dollar is not doing well. And so many other currencies around the world are pegged to the US dollar that, when stuff happens in the US, it affects the entire world. So I really think that, and this is not financial advice, this is just my opinion, I think that having some funds held in crypto is just a safe bet for everybody, because I don't see it going anywhere. If anything, I think more and more established businesses and countries are going to begin to accept crypto as currency. And even if they don't, it's a good thing just to have and to save, for a rainy day if you need it. It to me seems like the safest thing, and specifically Bitcoin, because it has a cap on how many Bitcoins there are going to be. There will only ever be 21 million, right? So there's no fear of, anybody printing more. Like the price is the price, and yes, it changes, but like there's a certain level of like security that comes from the scarcity that's established there.
Yeah, that's very, very interesting. Now, what are some ways, like in your perspective as well, like that, writers and journalists can get involved with NFTs and Web3, especially poets?
So SuperRare launched a DAO last year. I just wanted to touch upon that quickly because we're bringing satellite galleries into our DAO, and these are all more places where artists can apply to try to get into the DAO. And one of these spaces is the Verse, which is completely dedicated to poetry in the metaverse. And what I love about what they're doing is they're really pushing the envelope when it comes to what is a poem. Like, is it a multimedia artwork? Is it like a really cool artwork with the poem written in the middle? Is it a short film? One poem by Ana Maria Caballero that's really cool is her voice was recorded, and then the artist used her voice to generate an artwork that changes with the modulation of her voice. So it's like,
wow.
Yeah, it's kind of like a data NFT, And so it's like the only good things can happen when like writers and artists come together, and and hopefully, coders, and like just the more various types of things come into the crypto art scene, I think the more interesting it's going to be. And we've already seen film, photography, music is starting to get in there. So there are all kinds of ways for many different types of artists to get involved as creators in crypto art. But when it comes to journalists, obviously you can reach out to me. I'm Vinny at SuperRare.com. You can send me some pitches or ask for some advice on how to get into being a journalist in the space. Right-click Save, Outland, NFT Now. These are all great places to try to send your writing. Just because like we're all looking for journalists who have open minds, are good at researching, and who are genuinely interested in the space. Because something that I love about, crypto journalism is just that, like, when I was a journalist, so much of my work was trying to prove myself to the New York Times, trying to prove that I was smart enough and a good enough writer and, pristine enough to get into the New Yorker and etc. Right. And with crypto journalism, it's not about that. It's about, can you tell the story? And in some ways, being, a scrappy journalist like I was actually worked better for me, because I'm willing to do anything to get that story. I'll stay up all night emailing people and DMing people on Twitter and just like, researching and trying to get it right. And so that kind of like hard work, I think, is much more recognized in crypto journalism than in traditional journalism.
I definitely want to also get into as well, just in regards to the metaverse, like more into that. So what is your perspective of the metaverse, you know, especially when it comes down to like AI, AR, I mean, when it comes down to AI and like VR possibly?
Yeah, I'm super into it. I actually, I'm teaching a class on Class 101. That's like a 27 lesson kind of masterclass on NFTs across industries. And I just finished my metaverse chapter. And what was really interesting was like, I hadn't been in Decentraland for maybe like 6 months, and they have really ramped it up. Like they made it so much more sophisticated than it was even just 6 months ago, which indicates to me that not only is money being poured in, but there's also like consumer need for it. Like people are going there. And like when I poured it in, there were like 10 other people also in that entryway, you know, learning the controls. And so, yeah, what I love about the metaverse is like, I actually have the Oculus headset. I got it last year just to kind of see what it was about. And I like went to a Billie Eilish concert in virtual reality because I love her. And, you know, I've played a couple games there. My stepson's obsessed with playing games there. And it's just been like an amazing way to connect with people from all around the world. Like I made a bunch of friends in Mexico City when I was doing some reporting there, and we, you know, we have the ability to like play Beat Saber together, like thousands of miles away. And, you know, we can go to concerts, and we can, I actually in Decentraland yesterday saw, or not yesterday, it was on Sunday, I think. I walked in and I came across like people having conversations about, you know, dyke bars in New York and why it's really sad that we're losing so many of them. And the fact that like, you know, it's a lot easier for gay bars that cater to men to survive than for lesbian bars. And like, you know what I mean? I came across this like huge, awesome, like cultural event, you know, and I'm bi, and I like am a big part of the queer community here. And like to randomly stumble upon like an event that's talking about like my scene here was like so amazing and like so random at the same time. And so I think that's a pretty big indicator into what is happening in the metaverse. This is where people are meeting up to have really deep conversations. And I think like in the case of the dyke bars, to hopefully like make change. You know, if we're having these conversations here, then maybe we'll see some action, even if it's as simple as like, all right, go, you know, be a patron at your neighborhood lesbian bar because they need the income, right? Like, so I think it's like going to create a great opportunity for social movements to gain footing and to have these deep intellectual conversations, and then for action to be taken in, you know, whatever way that it is. That's what I've been seeing. And just a lot of like artists coming together and putting their artwork up. I've noticed that crypto voxels is, or they're just called voxels now, is much more oriented towards like artists, collectors, and gallerists. And then Decentraland right now is a little bit more commercial. Like there's Samsung, there's a SuperRare gallery, Coca-Cola did an event there. And so it's really interesting to see like these different funnels, you know, of what the metaverse is turning into. To speak to what you were saying about AR, I really feel like we're not even scratching the surface with augmented reality. There's this great publishing house in Mexico City called Minerva, and they publish books with images, and you can take your phone and look at the image, and the image comes to life. And so like AR is going to affect publishing. Like imagine, you know, how are we supposed to have a history of crypto art book without AR? Like you need to look at it because some of them are going to be moving, some of them are MP4s or GIFs or whatever. Like I see this technology changing absolutely everything about what we do, making it more interactive, and just having that community element being front and center. Like we're not living in a world that's solo anymore. Like we are always connected. And I think again, as long as we use that power for good, rather than what we've seen happen with social media, that you really can have like that kind of almost utopian phygital life that we're definitely destined to get to, because there's no going back now, you know?
Yeah. I feel like the NFT Web3 space has grown so much, and I like how inclusive, it's getting. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? I interviewed an amazing makeup artist. She's absolutely amazing. Her name is Laurel Charleston, a
I
trans
love
makeup artist.
her. She did the Super Trans exhibition for SuperRare. She's so talented and has
Wow.
amazing hair.
Yeah. I had a chance to interview her, and she's done makeup for Doja Cat for Paris Fashion Week, which is phenomenal, like absolutely
Yeah,
talented. I also interviewed Mark Dusel. He's an artist. He's in Australia, but he's from the Philippines.
yeah,
So I had a chance to get to know his work, especially Gabe Weiss. Just to interact with different artists, from different walks of life is really, really amazing being in the space. But also too, like not only the Central Land, but also Sandbox.
yeah.
Sandbox is really, really cool, and it's gotten commercial as well.
Which, like, to me isn't a bad thing. I mean,
Yeah,
something
yeah.
that's happening, and I've never seen this happen before. I mean, granted, I'm soon to be 30, so I haven't been here for that long, but I've never seen brands adapting to the new technology. Like, what I've always seen is like a
Mm,
new technology comes out and brands are like, all right, you're going to do this now. Like, look at any social media platform. Think back to what it was like when it launched and compare that to now. Like, it's been
mhm.
transformed in a negative way. With the metaverse, companies are going in and they know that they can't do that. They have to look at what we're interested in and what we
Right.
want, and they have to adapt to that. And so that's why I'm saying the more diverse we can be, the more vocal we can be. Like, these brands are willing to listen to us. I mean, there are
Mhm,
different like legacy brands that are now thinking about launching DAOs, decentralized autonomous organizations, which
mhm,
means that for the first time we might be able to vote on, like, companies that produce products that we buy, or
mhm.
produce TV shows that we watch. Like, this is a really revolutionary time. It's
Right.
still very much in the first steps. I won't say it's early days because I hate that phrase. I think it a lot of the time is like an excuse for people to be like, I don't have a product, but you should invest. but but what I will say is, like, if we're still in our baby steps, that means that we are still welcoming more people in and teaching legacy brands how to treat us. This is the first
Mhm.
time in human history potentially that we can be like, this is what we want. If you don't give it to us, we're not interested, and you can go away. Like, how badass is that?
Yeah, right, exactly. And I think from my understanding, there's like a few, from what I've been told, there's a few beauty brands that's, doing their products as NFTs,
Yeah,
so that's really interesting to really, really see, slowly that the beauty industry is getting involved with NFTs, especially the car industry. Bentley's getting involved with
yeah.
NFTs. Also, there's so many different industries that are really just getting involved and putting, you know, stuff out there, or just trying to, find a way to take advantage of the space. And that's really cool to see.
Yeah, I mean, look at what's happening with fashion. I mean, Decentraland
Yeah,
has an
fashion too. Yeah.
entire like store on OpenSea where you can buy stuff. I haven't seen any cute nails yet, so I'm holding out. It's so funny because, like, I don't totally care about what my avatar wears, but if it had some awesome nails, I'd be like, all right, how much?
Yeah. Right, exactly. Your nails are really pretty.
Yeah, here everybody can see the evil eye.
Yeah, that's really, really cool. Yeah, who did them? Who did your nails?
I go to a nail tech named Gina. She just opened her own shop called Pink File in
Mhm.
Midtown. She's amazing. Definitely go. They're UV, so you can do anything. Especially give scritches to your furry friends.
Yeah, that's really, really cool. But how crucial is it for women to join in the NFT Web3 space?
Oh my God, so crucial. This is where my soapbox comes up. Like, we're super diverse in Web3.
Mhm,
There's so many awesome women and non-binary and trans people who are in the space, but
mhm,
we're not the ones who are the CEOs of the companies,
mhm,
and like, I love the founders of Super. They're awesome, but they're like, white surfer tech bros who are pretty woke, but like, they're not women, they're not people of color. So like,
mhm,
I think that we're always, and I would say this for myself too, we're always going to have blind spots from other people's experiences if we didn't ourselves experience it. And I
mhm,
consider myself to be an intersectional feminist and humanist, and so I
mhm,
always keep in mind that, like, it's all of these elements of your identity that create your specific experience. Like no two Hispanic people have the same experience.
Right.
Like, and you can say that for anybody, right? And so I just think that we have to make sure that there are women at the leadership level. And
Right.
because it was mostly white men who got into crypto in the first like 10 years of the space, and I'm talking like, let's say 2009 to 2019, that
Right.
means a lot of the established companies were founded by white men. And a lot of them are like in their 30s, you know? So like, so we need to continue to get women and people of color and queer people onboarded into the space so that we can learn about the space, and then we can eventually be the ones to found the next generation of crypto and Web3 companies that will take us into the future. Because as much as, you know, everybody at Super is willing to listen to me, I'm still not in those leadership calls, you know? And so how do we get more different kinds of people onto that leadership team? I think that has to be like our 5-year plan.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely believe that it's very, very important for women to be included in the different spaces and a lot of industries too, you know, because
yeah,
it's
right,
still,
not just crypto.
yeah, not just crypto, you know what I
Academia
mean?
too.
But most definitely, I think women's voices are just as important as the men's voices, you know, in a lot of industries, it's, you know, white or Asian dominated, you know,
Yeah.
and of course, Black women, you know, should have also a say as well, you know, in regards to,
Oh yeah.
especially Latina women as well, you know, in regards to, you know, ideas, you know, innovations and things like that. So definitely, you know, I'm
Exactly.
definitely a huge supporter of women getting involved in different industries, especially within the NFT industry.
Yeah, and there's so many. There are actually lots of women artists in the space, which is amazing. And I just, you know, I think we just have to like insert ourselves at every single level until we are everywhere. Because like you're saying, right? It's like it's not only about like making sure that we are being equitable. It's also just like we think about the world differently. And like I forget what the statistic was, but it was like, you know, the number of like Black female, you know, CEOs has been growing quite a lot over the last few years, but it's still such a small percentage of everyone. And it's like,
Right.
tell me who knows how to battle adversity better than like a Black businesswoman, you know?
Right.
Like she's dealing with like a lot of BS that most people, they don't have to go through that challenge. And I think
Exactly.
that's one positive thing for me out of what we began this conversation talking about: being bullied, being different, you know, being bullied for being different, like, you know, struggling with, you know, whether it's immigrant parents or like, you know, low income parents or whatever it is, we understand what it's like to struggle and to really earn what we have. And I think that these are perspectives more than anything that we need in crypto, because we need to stop acting like, you know, if you build it, they will come. That's not the case. We have to educate people. And we've got to like welcome people, and we have to do service for other people. You know, like there's this great group, Crypto Queer, who the leader of Crypto Queer decided the best way to get people into NFTs is to give them NFTs. Like, you know, one thing at Super, we're like, how do we get more people to buy NFTs? They might not know if they want NFTs at all, but if you give someone an NFT, they have that feeling of owning it. They might be more likely to actually buy one because they got that experience, you know? So it's like thinking outside of the box and just not being like profit driven 100% of the time. Like, yes, you need profits to run a successful company, but those profits should also be in service of, you know, the community that you're serving.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why some NFT projects or collections are doing giveaways. You know, I never won an NFT, but there was a Twitter space.
Not yet.
There was a Twitter space with Layback Llamas and Global Kind NFT, which Global Kind's a women ran NFT collection, and they held a space. And it was like this whole competition in regards to what advice you would give. So I said, okay, let me go ahead and enter, you know, and see what happens. You know, and I won my first NFT. I was like, oh wow. And it was
right. We should totally be doing more. And that's kind of why like POAPs, proof of attendance protocols, because they're free to mint. You know, you kind of get a little lookbook of the places that you've been over the last year or two, and you get to have this artwork. I mean, I have a POAP that was designed by Ryan Koopmans. Like, so it's like, whoa, okay, I can't afford your one of one, but here I have something in my wallet, you know, for something that I was a part of, a membership token kind of. But yeah, I also think like people should definitely be open to looking for NFTs like across the ecosystem. Like, you know, I definitely believe in Ethereum as far as like the blockchain that's going to take us to the next level with building a better society. But I also think that Tezos is a fantastic platform where you can get really cool art for literally $1. Like if you're someone who's new to collecting, you are not sure about the technology, maybe you know, think it's a little bit of a fluke, go onto Taya or onto Object or even onto the Solana marketplace, and you can find, you know, $1, $5, $10 artworks to collect, and you can support an artist and you can get your feet wet that way. Like I understand nobody wants to put $1,500 or $500 or $100 even into something they don't understand, right? So start small. And for me, like NFTs and NFT art are all about supporting artists. Like that's the most important thing at the end of the day. If I never sell my NFT, great. I mean, actually a couple NFTs, I remember thinking of buying them and I justified it as like, well, maybe I'll sell it for a profit one day. And now I'm like, I'm never selling. I love them. This is mine. So, you know, like I think a lot of people come to NFTs with the idea of like, all right, like I'm going to flip it. It's like, that's not that easy to do unless you like somehow have inside information or you follow the crypto market really, really closely, which I don't know, that doesn't sound like fun to me, like looking just for profits and flips, right? But like collecting art that you love, like that's been one big part of the crypto art renaissance. More people than ever are art collectors now. It's not just for rich people to buy $100,000 Picasso or whatever. Like everybody should have the freedom and the right to own art because we're humans and we love shiny things. We love being surrounded by beautiful things, right? So I think this is actually a super egalitarian movement in that sense.
Yeah, that's absolutely really, really amazing. You know, last but not least, where could people find you on social media and how can people support SuperRare or get involved with SuperRare?
Totally. So yeah, I'm Vinny the Snail across all platforms. I'm launching a class in late October with Class 101 called The Applications of NFTs in Web3. So if you want to learn a super in-depth but introductory course to the space, you can check that out. First 14 days are free, so you can see the first couple of lessons and see if you like it. And then, yeah, just join us on the Twitter spaces, follow SuperRare on Twitter and Instagram. You can reach out to me directly on all of my channels. And yeah, just here to help. Hope to see you all in some Twitter spaces. And yeah, hopefully more and more art to come.
All right. Yeah, that's really, really cool. Well, thank you so much, Vinny, for jumping onto the show. I really, really enjoyed this conversation.
Me too.
About NFTs and Web3 and also talking about, you know, SuperRare and getting to know more about the platform. So I definitely thank you for really giving me more inside information in regards to that. I really enjoyed this conversation. Thank you.
Yeah, totally. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, you're most welcome. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Hello, everyone. Thank you all so much for watching. Please like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel. Be sure to click the bell for notifications. Also follow me on my social media platforms and visit my website, ASIATHABIRD.com, and be on the lookout for more interviews involving Web3, NFTs, crypto, and the metaverse.